Welcome to the Sovereign CEO podcast. I am Caleb Jones. This is Sovereign CEO, where I help you move to a less bad country or set up an international backup plan and do all these things for very little money. Many of you have asked this question and I've never really addressed it. I'm kind of surprised. You know, when you do as much, when you pump out as much content as I do, you're surprised when you get a question you've never addressed publicly. I mean, I've addressed it, but not in detail. And that is, hey, if I want to spend a month, 6 months, or move to a new country, now, whether or not you want to move there, maybe want to spend a few weeks there, and I got to look for an apartment, how do you do that? What systems you use? Caleb, what is your methodology? Do you have one? Yes, I do. And it's a great question right now because I'm actually going through this literally right now. So if you didn't know, my wife is going to be in the United States for the next few months now. I'm in Guadalajara, Mexico. I'm here for a few more weeks, and then I go back to Dubai. We got rid of our house, which we both didn't like. Talked about this in prior podcasts, videos, and things like that. And so now I am homeless. So I have all of our fancy furniture and shit in Dubai, in a storage unit. And when I go back to Dubai, I'm going to get an apartment just for me for a while, for a few months, 6 months. I don't know. We haven't decided. And get all that, or at least some of it, not all of it, won't fit. Some of the best furniture will go back in that apartment, and I'll just use that apartment kind of as an office and just put my head down and work, which is kind of what I'm doing here in Guadalajara. And so I'm actually looking for apartments right now. Also, my objective is to have a year-round apartment in Paraguay, my second home, by June of next year, 2024. A year-round apartment. So, and I've looked for apartments there. I've spent a lot of time looking for apartments at either as real apartments, as Airbnbs, in some cases hotels or long-term hotels, things like that. Now, if you're wondering, if you're watching the video version of this, I am in a hotel here in Guadalajara. Sometimes I look for Airbnbs, sometimes look for hotels. It depends on various factors, often how long I'm staying. I just found a better deal here in Guadalajara in this particular stay for this hotel. Very inexpensive hotel, very quiet hotel. It's a hotel I like, and I don't need a lot of room. It's not like I need a lot of space when I live anywhere. I'm pretty minimalist, especially when I travel. So here's the methodology, for what it's worth in terms of how I do this when I look for an apartment in a new country. So first of all, obviously you need to know your budget. So that's number one, right? What is your budget? And if you have plenty of money to spend, you should still have a budget. This is just money management 101. I do well financially, so I could technically afford all kinds of things. But instead what I did when I go back to Dubai is I have a very set budget. I want to keep the apartment to ideally around $1,600 US. And I already know in Dubai, and this shocks a lot of people, you can find a really cool either studio or one bedroom apartment. I'll talk about which one in a second, and the methodology and my reasoning, for $1,600 in a cool part of town with a cool view. Below that is even better. I can go to 900, 800. I would go up to 2,000, but I'd rather not. Kind of keep around $1,600. Could I afford more than $1,600? Yeah, a lot more. But why? So whatever it is for you, determine your budget in US dollars or your home currency. If you're coming from the UK, what have you, determine your budget. Okay. Number one. B, you need to know obviously how to translate in terms of currency and in how apartments charge. So, for example, in Dubai is a little weird. Most places in Dubai, when you rent them, you have to pay 4 checks per year, what they call I say payments, they call them checks. I'll explain this in a second. 4 payments per year, once per quarter or once a year. You do not pay, in most cases, you do not pay monthly in Dubai. Some countries are weird like this. So you have to understand this and know, how does the country pay rent? Now, if it's a Latin world, they're probably gonna be monthly. There are places in Asia that are weird too, like they're quarterly or once a year. So in Dubai, that you pay rent once a year. My first apartment in Dubai, which I did on my YouTube channel, my Sovereign CEO YouTube channel, did a walkthrough of it. It was a 2-bedroom apartment in the second tallest residential building in the world, in where they call the Marina. Did a whole walkthrough of it. That was like $2,800 a month. That was a once a year payment. So I just wrote a big check and it covered me for the entire year. I don't have to worry about monthly rent payments. So the good news is, you don't have to worry about monthly rent payments. The bad news is you got to come up with a hunk of money up front. So you have to be aware of that. How is rent collected? How are you going to pay the rent if you're not there? How long do you want to stay there? You need to know all these things. If you're going to stay there year round, how are you going to pay the rent? Do you have a local bank account in that country? If not, how are you going to cover that? You're going to pay it all in advance? If you are going to pay in advance, because you can make some kind of deals like this, you're going to pay it in advance, can you negotiate a deal? Can they, knock 15% off the price? Hey, I'm going to write you a massive check and cover you for a year. I want 20% off the rent. Can you do that? Okay. So that's the first thing. The next thing is you have to be aware that in many countries, especially if you are a white Westerner, people will take advantage of you because they assume you have more money, which is usually true, and they will jack up the price. This is a huge thing in Asia. This is a big thing in parts of Latin America. It's a huge thing in China. China, it's a huge thing. They actually have a word for it. I forget what it is, where you'll go into a furniture store and they'll have one price for the Chinese people and another price for white people because they know white people make more money and blah, 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 blah. So what you want to do in these scenarios, if that's the case, and I'm going to do this in Paraguay, what you want is someone from that country, a local, to do the initial contacting and negotiating for you. So the rental agent or the landlord, depending on who you're talking to, actually thinks it's that person renting, not you. Now you can show up with that person and look around, that you could be their friend or something. So the price is negotiated by a local, not by you. Because if it's negotiated by you, the odds are going to pay more. Now, are all countries like this? No. Like Dubai is not like this because there's a lot of white people there. So it's a little different. But there are a lot of places, Asia, Latin America in particular, where you might get screwed if you're doing this yourself, all by yourself. The best way to do this is to have someone on the ground there who an attorney or a real estate agent you develop a relationship with, and have them do this stuff for you. Have them do the groundwork for you. You still obviously look at the apartment and approve everything, obviously. But have them get the pricing, not you. You'll save a lot of money. It's the price of admission for this podcast. Next thing, the size of the apartment. Now, some people, it depends on your budget again. I can afford anything I want. And so what I had in Dubai before Pink Firefly moved there was I had a 2-bedroom place. I realized that I didn't need that. And I had a big giant living room, I had a big kitchen, and I never used all I do, this is my life when I'm not, not out doing extracurricular activities. You can go to my Alphabet 2.0 channel for more information on that. When I'm not doing that, and I'm usually not, I'm working. My typical day is pretty boring. I wake up, I shower, I work out, and I go back to work. I work all day and I work all night. So I don't need a lot of room. Now, maybe you're a more extroverted person. You have people over, you have friends over, you throw parties, you have people for game night. Factor that in there. How much room do you need? Minimum as you can. Now, does that mean that I should get a studio apartment? No. Here's the other problem. Here's the problem of going too small, is that you got to think this stuff through. One of my priorities in terms of my physical health and my energy, talk a lot of this at my Alpha Male 2.0 content, is my sleep. That's why I'm wearing this Oura ring, if you see this in the video version of this. Sleep is critical for me. And so a critical component of sleep is light. And most people sleep in rooms that get too light in the morning. And they wake up early, they don't get a really good sleep because you need to be in darkness. So what I do when I'm living by myself is I blackout curtain the walls. So in my last Dubai apartment before Pink Firefly moved there, you can get this stuff on Amazon, this black stuff, and you can actually plaster. It's this sticky black stuff. It's one side is sticky, like a sticker, and it's like a foot long, and you just basically cover the window with it. It's awesome. And you completely black out the windows. It doesn't look very nice. So if you live with a girl, especially a girl, she's not going to like it. But yet, well, Caleb, what about blackout curtains? Blackout curtains are very hit or miss. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You still have cracks on the sides. If you really want to go hardcore blackout curtains, you have to get the kind that actually Velcro to the sides and the top and the bottom. Those are pretty rare and they're expensive and they're a pain in the ass, and even then they don't work. So what I do is I just black them out. I used to know a guy who would actually he would rent or buy a place and he would get black paint and paint the inside of his windows black. Ugh, okay. Don't know how he got away with that landlord, but he did it. So if you're in a studio apartment, or if I was in a studio apartment, that would be the same room would be both my office and my bedroom, right? Fine, that's fine with me. I don't mind having a bed in my office. I don't give a fuck, but light. I want to have the light open when I'm working during the day for my circadian rhythm, and I want complete darkness at night. So that's not going to work. If I can't black out the windows in my office because I want light during the day. So I'm going to go for, even though I could easily do this, and I have no problem with a studio apartment, I'm going to go for a 1-bedroom apartment, a small 1-bedroom apartment. I'm going to make the bedroom my office. I'm going to put the bed out in the quote living room where the kitchen is. And I'm going to make that black. I'm going to black that whole thing out. Then I'll have the curtains open for the office. Now, why make the bedroom my office? Because depends on the apartment. The ones I've been looking at, the bedroom is more square footage than the little tiny living room in many of these apartments. Now, if it's a reverse, then I'll do the reverse. I'll put the bed in the bedroom, and it's a giant fancy, king bed that Pink Firefly and I had. It'll take up the whole room just fine, because I want a designated area for sleeping and a designated area for working. Cool? Cool. Okay. So that's the next thing. How are you going to maneuver this stuff? How do you factor this stuff? The next thing you have to worry about is kitchen appliances. Some countries include kitchen appliances, some don't. Some expect you to buy your own kitchen appliances when you move into a year-round apartment. Some are kind of hybrid. Some places do, some places don't. Dubai, generally speaking, expects you to buy, it's about 50-50. Sometimes they expect you to buy your own refrigerator, stove, washer, dryer, dishwasher. It's stupid. But sometimes they include them. So you'll have apartments in some countries that say furnished, unfurnished, or unfurnished with kitchen appliances. 3 different categories. You need to figure that out. Also, furnishing or not. Do you want to furnish it or not? Now, unfurnished is better, but if you're going to live there a long, long time, if this is going to be somewhere you're going to spend at least 6 months a year, you might want your own furnishings, right? You might, unless you're just not picky about this stuff. I like to have a really good mattress. I like to have really good blankets. I like to have a comfortable couch. So I'm going to get something unfurnished, but I already have furniture. When Pink Firefly moved to Dubai with me, we spent a lot of money on a lot of fancy furniture. So we have all kinds of fancy furniture there. So I'm looking for unfurnished apartments. You would be surprised in many countries that unfurnished and furnished are almost the same price, especially if you look at smaller apartments. I've just been surprised about this. Though technically, yes, if it's unfurnished, generally speaking, on average, it'll cost a little less money, and that's fine. Next thing, part of town. First, your first priority, in my opinion, in terms of part of town, should be the safest part of town, safety. If you're in a safe country like the UAE, where I live, or Japan, you don't have to worry about this because the whole city is going to be safe. If you live in South America, Latin world, maybe certain parts of Southeast Asia, you need to be aware of these things. As I record this podcast, I'm here in my hotel in Guadalajara, Mexico. Guadalajara is a really big city, big in terms of population and big in terms of size. Most of Guadalajara is fine in terms of crime and safety, but there are areas of Guadalajara that are not fine. You need to be aware of where these areas are and don't live there and don't even go there. Same thing with Colombia. There are parts of Bogota, Colombia, you just don't want to go. And there are parts of Bogota, Colombia, you're fine, you'll never have a problem. I've had done several videos on how to maneuver all that stuff and how to not have problems as you travel. For the record, I've said this many times, I have never had a single problem with crime in any country I've ever been in. I've been traveling the entire world since 2012? Well, before that, 2006? I've never had a single problem with crime anywhere in the world, and I've been in some shitholes because I do my research. So you need to do your research. Where is the safest part of town? Now, safest part of town is a very wide swath of options. You have lower middle class, upper class, super upper class. The more economically lower on the economic scale the country is, the higher class area in the country you'll be able to live. Paraguay is one of my favorite examples. Whenever I go to Paraguay, I'm living in literally the nicest part, not the nicest part of Asuncion, the nicest part of the entire country. It's a little area called Villa Mora plus, I always say it wrong, it's Yucasati, I forget. So it's these two little areas, it's really nice. And if you're a Westerner with a moderate income, you will be able to afford to live there or at least stay there when you go to Paraguay. So if it's Dubai, opposite. There are apartments in Dubai that are, that are, 50, 60, 70,000 US dollars a month, right? And there are apartments that are $1,500 a month that are still pretty good. So obviously, upper class means something very different in Dubai. That means you're a trillionaire, right? So the next aspect is what part of town do you want to live in based on what socioeconomic status you want. And then obviously, do you want to live in a house? Do you want to live in a high rise? How high you want to be? So here's the things about living in a high rise. There's pros and cons, by the way. If you live in a house, it's not as safe if you live in Latin America because it's on the ground and people can rob you. Right now, if you live in a safe area, though, shouldn't be a problem. You live in a high rise, much more safe. Okay, you're not going to worry about your stuff when you live in a high rise. There are disadvantages of living in a high rise. You can hear other people sometimes, and you hear loud noises, and you can talk about privacy and things like that. It's really what you want to do. Again, what is your lifestyle objectives? When you live in a high rise, my suggestion is to live as high as possible, especially if you're living in a city. Cities are noisy. So as I mentioned, when I lived in Dubai, pre-Pink Firefly, I lived in the second tallest residential building literally in the world, and I was on the 77th floor. Crazy high. I've shown videos of the view and things like that. It was awesome. And it was quiet because I couldn't hear anything. The only thing I could hear was there was a tram at the very bottom with a really loud ding, 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 ding. We do that every hour or so. So I'd hear that a little bit. Other than that, and if someone was, hot rodding their Lamborghini, really loud, rare that happened down the street, I could hear that barely. Other than that, I couldn't hear a thing because you're nice and high. Right here in this hotel, I'm on the 5th floor. So I'm hearing all kinds of shit. I'm hearing dogs barking and, police sirens and shit like that. I have my trusty Bose headphones right there when I work, so I have to listen to that stuff. Just be aware of those things. That's another factor that you have to factor in. Lifestyle objectives. Cool? Cool. Caleb, where do I find apartments? Well, every country is different. So every country has, this is kind of a rule. This is what I found. Every country has 2 big websites where you look for homes or apartments for rent or purchase. Every country. Paraguay's got 2, Dubai's got 2, Colombia's got 2, Mexico's got 2, the United States has rent.com, and I don't even know now. I mean, you Americans can tell me. Canada's got 2. Find out what those 2 are. How do you find out? You just ask somebody. Everybody knows what the 2 are. Anyone who lives in that country will know where are the 2 big websites where I can find an apartment to rent. And they'll tell you, and you sit down and just go through and look at pictures and go to town. And that's it. And you'll find on those things, they'll tell you things like how rent is paid, what the deposits are, what the refund, all that stuff. You got to figure all that out. Lastly, and this gets into the weeds a little bit, how are you going to handle things like the internet? So how is internet handled? You need to figure that out. Now, sometimes it might include internet. If it's more an Airbnb-ish type scenario, it'll include internet. If it's not, if you're going to move there, you got to figure out your own internet. So in Dubai, there's 3 or 4 internet companies, but there's 2 big ones. It's Etisalat and Du. And so I'm on Etisalat. So I have an Etisalat account through both my phone and my home internet. Same thing. You got to figure this out. Are you going to have internet through that building? Does the building have fiber? How fast is the internet in the building? Do you need a satellite dish? You got to figure that out. How are you going to deal with internet? What are your internet needs? Obviously, I have internet income, so I need a good, solid internet connection wherever I go. I don't need something super fast. It's helpful. I mean, right here in Guadalajara, in this hotel, when I do a speed test, I'm getting like 19 megabits up and down. Fine. It's fine. Now, in Dubai, I get hundreds. In Mexico, I get 19. 19 is fine. It's not a big deal. So be aware of that. It's another factor to factor in and have that pre-planned. Don't move into your apartment and then spend two weeks trying to figure out your fucking internet. Especially if you don't have a phone or a SIM card there. Because that's on topic for another time. Getting a SIM card in your phone for the local country, so at least you can tether and do a hotspot, or figure out your internet case. But don't figure that out. Know what you're going to do with your internet once you move, before you move. You don't want to be screwing around for weeks. I've seen guys do this. They fart around for weeks with the internet because they didn't plan. Plan that out, and that's the primary thing here in this podcast is plan it out. Don't knee-jerk this stuff. Plan it out. The more you plan, the more research you do, the less problems you'll have once you move, or at least hang out for X number of months in your new apartment, and then you'll have a wonderful time. And that is it. I will see you in the next podcast. Have fun. Bye.